What happens when a lighthearted late-night interview transforms into one of the most uncomfortable moments in television history? Tonight, we're breaking down the explosive exchange between Mila Kunis and Jimmy Fallon that nobody saw coming. An exchange so intense it ended with security, escorting one of Hollywood's biggest stars off a set. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened that night. The Tonight Show stage was set like any other evening. The audience buzzed with anticipation as Jimmy Fallon delivered his opening monologue, getting laughs with his usual blend of impressions and self-deprecating humor. When he finally introduced Mila Kunis, the crowd erupted. She walked out in a sleek black dress, waving to the audience with that signature smile everyone knows from her years on screen. Jimmy greeted her with his typical enthusiasm, a hug, a handshake, the usual banter as she settled into the guest chair. "Mila Kunis, everybody," Jimmy said, clapping along with the audience. "Thank you so much for being here. You look amazing." "Thanks for having me, Jimmy," Mila responded, crossing her legs and adjusting her dress. The energy seemed normal, friendly, even. Jimmy dove right into the interview. "So, you got this new project coming out, and I have to say, I watched the trailer, and it looks incredible. But I heard something interesting about the production. Is it true that you actually insisted on doing all your own stunts?" Mila's smile tightened just slightly. "Well, I wouldn't say I insisted. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration that's been floating around." "Oh, really?" Jimmy leaned forward, sensing something in her tone, but pushing ahead anyway because I read that you got into a pretty heated argument with the director about it, that you want to do this crazy rooftop scene yourself, and he was like, "No way." "Where exactly did you read that, Jimmy?" Mila's voice had an edge now that the audience might not have caught, but Jimmy should have. "I think it was one of the trades, maybe Variety. I don't remember exactly, but it was definitely out there." Jimmy laughed, seemingly oblivious to the shift in energy. Miller nodded slowly. "Right. So, you're bringing up something you read somewhere that you can't even remember where, and you're presenting it as fact on national television." The audience laughed nervously, unsure if this was part of a bit. Jimmy's smile wavered for just a moment before he recovered. "Well, I mean, it's not like I'm making it up. If it's out there, it's out there. I'm just asking about it." "But that's exactly the problem, isn't it?" Miller uncrossed her legs and sat forward. "You're just asking about it without verifying if it's true, without considering whether it might be completely fabricated. And now thousands of people watching this are going to think that I'm some kind of diva who fights with directors." Jimmy laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. "Come on, Mila. Nobody thinks that. I'm not trying to paint you in a bad light here. I'm just, we're having conversation." "Are we having conversation, Jimmy, or are you just repeating tabloid gossip to fill airtime?" The audience was completely silent now. You could feel the tension radiating through the studio. Jimmy shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. Okay. I can tell this is a sore subject. Let's move on. Let's talk about something else." He glanced down at his note cards, flipping through them quickly. "So, you've been in the industry for a long time now. Started when you were really young. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you hadn't gotten into acting?" Miller stared at him for a long moment. "Are you serious right now?" "What?" "It's just a question. It's a nothing question. Jimmy, it's the kind of question you ask when you haven't prepared. When you don't actually care about having a real conversation." Mila's voice was calm but firm. "You went from asking me about fake gossip to asking me a hypothetical about a life I didn't live. Where's the substance?" Jimmy's face flushed red. He looked out at the audience, then back at Ma, clearly trying to figure out how to regain control of the interview. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Mila, but I think you're being a little unfair here. This is how talk shows work. We talk about current projects. We joke around. We keep things light." "Light?" Mila repeated, almost laughing. "Right, light? Because that's all anyone expects from women in these interviews, isn't it? Just smile. Laugh at the host jokes. Tell a cute story about your dog, or whatever. Don't push back. Don't challenge anything." "That's not what I'm saying at all," Jimmy protested. "I ask the same kinds of questions to everyone who comes on this show." "Do you, though?" Miller tilted her head. Because I've watched your show, Jimmy. I've seen how you interview men versus how you interview women. When you have a male actor on, you ask about their process, their craft, the challenges of the role. When you have a woman on, it's about fashion and relationships. And did you enjoy working with so and so? That is absolutely not true, Jimmy said, his voice rising slightly. I treat all my guests with respect. Respect? Mila said, you want to talk about respect? Let me ask you something, Jimmy. Did you or your team reach out to my publicist before this interview to verify any of the stories you plan to bring up? Jimmy hesitated. Will we do our research? That's not what I asked. I asked if you verified anything with my team. It's a yes or no question. The audience was completely transfixed now. Some people were holding their phones up recording. Jimmy looked at his producers off stage, but no help was coming. Look, Mila, I think we gotten off track here, Jimmy said, trying to smile. Why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we can start fresh. No, Mila said flatly. I don't want to start fresh. I want to finish this conversation. Jimmy's smile disappeared entirely. I'm not sure what you want from me here. I want you to acknowledge that you did a lazy job preparing for this interview, and that you relied on gossip instead of facts. I'm not going to apologize for doing my job, Jimmy said, his jaw tight. Your job is to entertain people by spreading misinformation. Mila shot back. My job is to host a talk show, and part of that is asking questions based on what's in the news, what people are talking about, even if what people are talking about is a lie. The back and forth was relentless now, both of them leaning forward in their chairs, voices overlapping. I think we need to take a commercial break, Jimmy said firmly, looking directly at the camera. Of course you do, Mila said, shaking her head. Run away from the uncomfortable conversation. I'm not running away from anything, Jimmy snapped. And this was the first time his composure fully cracked. You came on my show, and you're attacking me in front of my audience. That's not fair. Not fair. Mila's eyebrows shot up. You know what's not fair, Jimmy? Having someone invite you onto their platform, and then use that platform to perpetuate false narratives about you. That's not fair. Jimmy stood up from his desk, which was unusual. The audience gasped. You know what, Mila? Maybe you should have declined the invitation if you had such a problem with how I run my show. Mila stood up as well, matching his energy. Maybe I should have, but I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time someone would actually care about having a meaningful conversation instead of just going through the motions. Meaningful conversation? Jimmy laughed bitterly. You've turned this into a lecture. You're standing here talking down to me like I'm some kind of amateur. If the shoe fits, Jimmy. The audience was in complete shock. Some people were whispering to each other. Others had their hands over their mouths. The band members were frozen, unsure whether to play them to commercial or just stay silent. Jimmy pointed toward the wings. You know what? Maybe you should just leave. This clearly isn't working. Oh, now you want me to leave? Mila said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Can't handle someone pushing back. So you just want them gone? I can handle plenty, Jimmy said through gritted teeth. What I can't handle is someone coming on my show and disrespecting me in my own house. Your house. Mila took a step closer. This isn't your house, Jimmy. This is a television studio owned by a network, and I'm a guest they invited. You don't get to kick me out just because I'm not playing along with your game. I absolutely can ask you to leave if you're being hostile, Jimmy countered. Hostile, Mila repeated, laughing without humor. I'm being hostile because I'm asking you to do better, because I'm calling out sloppy journalism. This isn't journalism, Jimmy said, his voice rising. This is entertainment. There's a difference, and there's the problem right there, Mila said, pointing at him. You hide behind the word entertainment like it absolves you of any responsibility, like it doesn't matter what you say or what rumors you spread because, hey, it's just entertainment. I didn't spread any rumors, Jimmy protested. I asked a question based on a published article. An article you didn't fact-check. An article you can't even remember where you read. An article that my team could have told you was completely false if you bothered to ask. Mila crossed her arms. But you didn't ask because you don't actually care if it's true. You just care if it makes for good television. Jimmy ran his hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. You're twisting everything I'm saying. I'm not twisting anything. I'm holding up a mirror, and you don't like what you see. One of the producers rushed onto the stage trying to whisper something to Jimmy, but he waved them away. Not now. Maybe you should listen to them, Mila said. Maybe they're trying to save you from yourself. I don't need saving, Jimmy said. What I need is for you to either sit down and finish this interview like a professional or leave like a professional. Mila said slowly. You mean smile and nod and pretend everything is fine? Play the game. Don't make waves. Just be grateful I got invited at all. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, just in different words. Mila turned to address the audience directly. How many of you have seen interviews where the guest just goes along with whatever the host says, even when it's wrong, even when it's invasive, even when it's disrespectful? Everybody, right? Because that's what we're trained to do. Don't rock the boat. Don't be difficult, Ma. You can't just talk to my audience like that, Jimmy said. She turned back to him. Why not? They're people, aren't they? They have brains. They can think for themselves. Or, do you prefer they just sit there and laugh on cue? The audience was utterly silent now, hanging on every word. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something else entirely, something raw and real that rarely happened on late-night television. Jimmy's face was red now, a mix of anger and embarrassment. You're out of line. Am I? Or am I just saying what everyone else is too polite to say? Mila took another step toward his desk. When was the last time you had a real conversation on this show, Jimmy? Not a scripted bit, not a promotional interview, but an actual conversation where you challenge your guest or let them challenge you. I have real conversations all the time, Jimmy said defensively. Name one. I'm not going to stand here and defend my entire career to you. I'm not asking you to defend your entire career. I'm asking you to name one time you had a real conversation on this show. Mila waited, but Jimmy said nothing. That's what I thought. You don't know anything about what goes on behind the scenes. Jimmy said, you don't know how hard we work, how much preparation goes into every show. Then where was that preparation tonight? Mila asked, where was the hard work when you brought up a false story about me? Where was the care when you asked me a throwaway question about my hypothetical life? Those were just conversation starters. Jimmy said weakly. They were lazy and you know it. Ma's voice softened just slightly, but the intensity remained. Look, Jimmy, I don't think you're a bad person. I don't even think you're a bad host most of the time. But tonight you were unprepared. And instead of admitting that, you're getting defensive and trying to make me the villain. I'm not trying to make you anything, Jimmy said. You're doing that all by yourself. There it is again, Mila said, shaking her head. Can't take responsibility. So deflect. Blame me for reacting instead of examining what caused a reaction in the first place. The producer was back on stage now, this time more insistent, pulling Jimmy aside. They had a heated, whispered conversation while Mila stood there, arms crossed, waiting. The audience watched in stunned silence as this unprecedented scene unfolded before them. When Jimmy came back, his expression had changed. It was harder now, more resolved. Mila, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the show. You're kicking me off? Mila asked, though she didn't sound surprised. You've made it clear you don't want to be here, and you disrupted the entire taping. So yes, I'm asking you to leave. Asking or telling, does it matter? Miller smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Yeah, Jimmy, it does matter because asking implies I have a choice, and telling implies you're using your power as the host to silence someone who's making you uncomfortable. I'm not trying to silence you, Jimmy said exasperated. I'm trying to save what's left of this show by getting rid of the problem, right? By removing the person who won't play along. Mila looked out at the audience one more time. This is what happens when you speak up. Remember that. That's enough, Jimmy said, his voice hard. Security. Can we please escort Miss Kunis off the stage? 2 security guards appeared from the wings, moving slowly toward the stage. They looked uncomfortable, clearly not expecting to be part of whatever this was. Mila watched them approach, her expression unreadable. Really, Jimmy? Security. Her voice was calm now, almost eerily so. "This is how you handle conflict. This is your solution." "You've left me no choice," Jimmy said, staying behind his desk now, putting that barrier between them. "You came here to promote a project, and instead you spent the entire time attacking me in my show." "I came here expecting a professional interview," Mila corrected. "I came here expecting the bare minimum of preparation and respect. And when I didn't get that, I said something." "That's not an attack, Jimmy. That's accountability." One of the security guards stepped onto the stage, speaking quietly. "Miss Kunis, we're going to need you to come with us." Mila held up a hand. "Give me one more minute." She turned back to Jimmy. "Before I go, I want to say something, and I want you to really hear it. This isn't about me being difficult. This isn't about me having a bad day or being in a bad mood. This is about a pattern that exists across this entire industry where we accept mediocrity because it's comfortable, because it's easy, because challenging, it makes us the problem. I don't accept mediocrity," Jimmy said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "You do, though. Every time you read a question off a card without thinking about it, every time you repeat gossip without verifying it, every time you let a guest leave without having learned anything about them, you're accepting mediocrity." Mila's voice wasn't angry anymore. It was almost sad. "And the thing is, you're talented, Jimmy. You're funny. You're charismatic. People love you. But you're coasting, and that's a waste." "I think you've said enough," Jimmy replied quietly. "You're probably right." Mila looked at the security guards. "Okay, I'm ready." But before she moved, she turned to the audience one last time. "I'm sorry you had to see this. I'm sorry your fun night out turned into whatever this was. But I'm not sorry for speaking up. I hope you're not sorry either." The audience didn't know how to respond. A few people started clapping hesitantly. Then a few more joined in, and then suddenly half the audience was applauding while the other half sat in stunned silence. It was chaotic and strange and completely unprecedented. Jimmy stood there frozen, watching as Miller walked toward the security guards. But then she stopped and turned back one more time. "You know what the saddest part is, Jimmy?" She didn't wait for him to answer. "You're going to edit this down. Cut out the uncomfortable parts. Maybe make it seem like I was just being unreasonable. And tomorrow people will talk about how Mila Kunis freaked out on The Tonight Show, how she was difficult and ungrateful. And the actual issues, the things I brought up about preparation and responsibility and respect, those will get lost in the noise." "We don't edit the show like that," Jimmy said, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. "Don't you?" Mila smiled sadly. "Guess we'll find out." The security guards gently guided her toward the wings. She walked with her head high, not rushing, not looking back. The audience watched in absolute silence as one of Hollywood's biggest stars was escorted off one of television's biggest stages. When she disappeared into the wings, Jimmy stood there for a long moment, unsure what to do. The band didn't play. The audience didn't applaud. Everyone was just frozen in this bizarre moment that nobody knew how to process. Finally, Jimmy cleared his throat and looked at the camera. "We're going to take a commercial break." His voice sounded hollow. The director called cut, and the stage lights dimmed slightly. The audience sat there in the dark, murmuring to each other, pulling out phones, texting friends, posting on social media. What they just witnessed was already spreading across the internet at lightning speed. Videos filmed on cell phones were being uploaded. Tweets were being fired off. Think pieces were probably already being drafted. In the wings, Miller was surrounded by producers and network executives, all talking at once, all trying to figure out what to do, how to handle this, whether to try to salvage something or just cut their losses. But Mila wasn't listening to any of them. She was already taking off her microphone, already mentally checked out. Back on stage, Jimmy was having his own heated conversation with his team. Someone suggested bringing out the next guest early. Someone else suggested ending the show. Someone else suggested having Jimmy address what happened directly. But Jimmy just shook his head at all of it, sitting down at his desk and putting his face in his hands. The audience was still there, still buzzing with confused energy, still trying to understand what they'd witnessed. Some people were laughing nervously. Some were arguing with their friends about who was right. Some were just sitting in shocked silence. The woman in the third row who'd been so excited when Mila first walked out was now crying, though whether from stress or disappointment or something else entirely, nobody could tell. When the show came back from commercial, Jimmy sat alone at his desk. The guest chair where Miller had been sitting was empty, a stark reminder of what had just transpired. So, Jimmy started, then stopped. He looked down at his desk, then back up at the audience. That was something. A few uncomfortable laughs from the crowd. I'm not really sure what to say right now. We had Mila Kunis scheduled, and as you saw, that didn't go as planned. Someone in the audience shouted. She was right. Jimmy's jaw tightened. Look, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Clearly, Miller had some feelings about how the interview was going, and she expressed those feelings, and now she's gone. We still have a show to do. So, we're going to bring out our next guest and try to end this night on a better note. But you could tell his heart wasn't in it. The energy was gone, sucked out of the studio by what had just happened. When the next guest came out, a comedian promoting their new special, the conversation was stilted and awkward. Jimmy kept missing beats, forgetting to laugh at jokes, losing his place on his cards. The comedian tried their best to inject some life into the segment, but it was like trying to resuscitate something that was already dead. The audience barely responded. They were still processing, still trying to figure out what they'd witnessed, whether it was real or staged, whether Mila was a hero or a villain, whether Jimmy was justified or out of line. There were no easy answers, no clear good guys or bad guys, just a messy, uncomfortable situation that nobody had quite known how to handle. When the show finally ended and the audience filed out, they were all talking. The conversation spilled out into the lobby, onto the streets, into cars and subways and group chats. People were already taking sides, already forming opinions, already creating narratives about what had really happened up there on that stage. And somewhere in all of that chaos, the actual conversation Miller had tried to have, the points she tried to make about preparation and responsibility and respect, those started to get lost, buried under hot takes and reaction videos and celebrity gossip, just like she predicted. The videos spread like wildfire. By the time people were waking up the next morning, clips of the confrontation had been viewed millions of times. Think pieces appeared in every major publication. Media analysts dissected every word, every gesture, every facial expression. Some praised Mila for speaking truth to power, for refusing to play the game, for using her platform to call out systemic issues in entertainment journalism. Others criticized her for being ungrateful, for ambushing a host who was just doing his job, for turning what should have been a fun interview lecture. And Jimmy, he released a statement through his publicist, something carefully worded about respecting all his guests and hoping everyone could move forward. It said everything and nothing at the same time. The kind of statement designed to diffuse rather than engage, to smooth over rather than address. Exactly the kind of response Miller had probably expected. The incident became a cultural touchstone referenced in other interviews, parodied on sketch shows, analyzed in film school classes. People argued about it online for weeks, months even. Was Mila right to confront Jimmy so directly? Was Jimmy wrong to ask about unverified gossip? Should she have handled it differently? Should he have been better prepared? Round and round the arguments went, never quite reaching any kind of consensus. But perhaps the most interesting part wasn't what happened on that stage, but what happened after in the broader conversation about entertainment media, about the relationship between hosts and guests, about responsibility and preparation and respect. Because regardless of how you felt about the confrontation itself, it had opened up a dialogue that the industry had been avoiding for years. So what do you think? Was Miller justified in calling out Jimmy's interview style? Or did she take things too far? Drop a comment below and let us know where you stand. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next video. We've got more controversial celebrity moments coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss them.